Hi everyone, I'm Supul. I'm a CIMA exams complete student and I was able to score 150 out of 150 for P3 among other high marks for OTQ subjects. So I would like to share some tips, tricks and rules I used to pass my OTQ exams with great marks. I will also share my insights about time management and about handling the exam stress. So if you have never faced an OTQ exam before, it can be quite daunting if you don't prepare well. The format is quite different to other exams, right? It is not a normal multiple choice question or MCQ exam. It has many different question types. So early preparation and planning is the key to getting a good mark and managing stress during the exam. It is important to familiarize yourself with the exam engine and all the tools it has. As the assessment is computer based, it is always important to know what to expect before your first OTQ exam to avoid any last minute surprises, which we absolutely don't want. So, personally, I went through the subject material thoroughly and I tried to clarify any doubts I had about the subject matter. This ensured that I would be confident while answering questions, which saved me valuable exam time. And I always try to find a logical sequence to remember subject matter rather than memorizing. So this proved valuable to me when I want to recall subject matter fast during the exam. And for remembering quite complex subject matter, I always try to use real world examples from actual business scenarios and companies. That way, the subject matter would always stay in my memory with the actual story involved. So that made easier for me to recall it faster during the exam. And unlike memorizing something and trying to cram in the exam, subject matter studied and remembered with the use of an example used to stay in my mind for much, much longer. However, there are exams like E1, E2, E3, which would require some memorization from your end. So for exams like that, I ensured that I memorized the most important subject matter closer to the exam day so that it would stay fresh in my memory. However, there were instances where I was not able to fully memorize some process, cycle, etc. So that if that particular process cycle was important for the exam, first of all, I identified what I was struggling with. Then I isolated them and I wrote them down on separate sheets and I memorized them every single day during the exam period. More importantly, I did this on the day of the exam as well. So the logic behind that was that I tried to ensure that this subject matter would stay in my short memory during the exam, helping me to recall that particular subject matter if required during the exam fast. Then I practiced as many questions as I could. This is probably the most important step of the whole process, and this would definitely decide whether you pass or fail an OTQ exam. Trust me on that. Initially, I started doing exam questions time. Then, after the time was over, I corrected my responses and I went through all the answers and the explanations one after the other. For correct answers, I still read the explanations given to understand if I have thought or whether I have thought according to the expectations of the examiner or if it was just a fluke. And for all the answers I had gotten wrong, I went through the explanations carefully and I tried to ensure that I understood the mistake, ensuring that I would not repeat the same mistake in the future. And during this process, if I encountered any subject area that I was uncomfortable with, I always made sure to go back to the subject materials and revise those areas so that the subject matter would get clarified in my memory. Although this process doesn't seem easy, it is quite rewarding And you can replicate this process to any exam you would face in your life. And this process would help you to face the exam with a lot of confidence. And it can even help you answer some OTQs in less than 15 seconds, right? That would allow you to spend a lot more time on the harder and more complicated questions that warrants more time and effort from your end. And on the day before the exam, I always made it a habit to practice 2 mock papers. However, in this instance, the biggest difference was that I tried to replicate the exam conditions as much as I could so that my mind would be better prepared for the real exam and I would also be more relaxed and less stressed before and during the actual exam. I turned off my mobile phone. I informed all my family that I was doing an exam, and I tried to stick to all the exam rules of CIMA. So this process helped me a lot to be less anxious during the actual exam, as it was not a novel experience to my brain anymore, right? I was simply sitting for another exam like I did the day before. And I highly recommend you do this during your exam preparation to ensure that you get a great mark while being less stressed and anxious during your actual exam, because this would allow you to be better prepared for the actual exam. Most importantly, time management is crucial for a great mark during the exam. So if you have followed all the steps we have just discussed, you would be at a considerable advantage compared to the other people. However, when answering questions in the first round, ensure you answer the easy and straightforward question. Then, in the next round, come back to the harder and more time consuming question. However, ensure not to dwell on one question for too long, no matter how complicated it is. This is one of the key pitfalls we see in many students. You get the same mark for a question regardless of its complexity. So please keep that in your mind and don't dwell on one question for too long, which would not help with your time management. If you have time remaining after answering and checking all the other questions, then you can of course come back to the questions you abandoned and then you can try to answer those questions. Another very important tip is to never underestimate the power of elimination. So for some questions, you might not know the answer directly. That's fine. However, there can be answers within the question which you know are definitely wrong. So you can use the process of elimination to eliminate those answers that you know are incorrect to arrive at the correct answer. So I have used this technique numerous times during my CIMA exams, and you can use that too. As a general rule, never leave any question unanswered by the end of the exam. Even for questions that you don't know the answer, leaving some answer is always better than leaving no answer, as luck might be on your side. We never know. So always leave some answer for all the questions without leaving any question blank. So if you follow the guidance in this video, you would be able to pass your OTQ exams with great marks and proceed swiftly through CIMA. The process is not easy, but it is definitely rewarding and it would help you throughout your career to prepare for exams and face them with confidence. So good luck with your exams. Hope you do great. And I wish you all the very best. Thank you.